CGTN's Nathan King takes a look at some of the key events that led to the current state of affairs between Washington and Tehran.
In May 2015, Iranians took to the streets of Tehran to celebrate the Iran nuclear deal, inked with the US and other world powers. To many, it was a potential end to years of sanctions and international isolation. Less than 5 years later, tears and anger as millions on the same streets were mourning the assassination of one of their most revered leaders. What changed and why?
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
In May 2018, after months of failed global diplomacy to save it, the Trump administration abandoned the Iran nuclear deal. Outside the US, analysts agreed that the deal was working and had allayed fears that Iran's nuclear power program could be a cover for a plan for future nuclear weapons. But for the Trump administration, it wasn't strong enough. They wanted limits on Iran's ballistic missile program and an end to Iran's regional presence in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon and beyond. Iranian proxies organized and funded by General Soleimani, like Hezbollah and Iraqi Shiite militias in Iraq, largely ran counter to US interests in the region, and sanctions were reimposed, and the US sought to cut Iranian oil exports to zero.
From that point on, after he exited the deal, we have been seeing the pressure ratchet up and the escalations from the United States with this maximum pressure sanctions campaign that has, crumbled the Iranian economy, denied the Iranians the ability to export oil, even denied food and medicine inside of Iran.
Iran essentially did not respond to the US for a year. The European Union, Russia and China, all signatories of the deal, tried to find ways to keep their side of the deal and Iranian oil flowing. But the US continued to ratchet up the pressure, threatening sanctions on European, Chinese and other companies dealing with Iran. Many complied with Washington after intense pressure. Then Iran finally responded, cutting its commitments on uranium enrichment under the nuclear deal and taking actions in the region, impounding oil tankers. And on the 25th of June 2019, Iran shot down a US drone that it said entered its airspace. The US prepared a military response, but backed down at the last moment. But then in September, Saudi oil fields were attacked in a sophisticated drone strike. Houthi rebels in Yemen claim responsibility, but Washington pointed the finger at Tehran. Then came an uptick of attacks on US facilities in Syria and Iraq. Washington blamed Iranian proxies, and the death of a US contractor and the following siege of the US embassy in Baghdad by militias backed by Iran was the breaking point. The US president was offered military options and chose to assassinate Soleimani. So what comes next? The US president claims the assassination was carried out to prevent a war, not start one. Few outside the White House see it that way. In fact, most see it as a victory for hardliners in both the US and Iran.
Clearly, Trump's policy has emboldened forces inside of Iran who will not be deterred. These are groups and, the IRGC and hardliners who really believe, just as in the United States, a common refrain is, all the Iranians understand is force and violence, and that's exactly what these IRGC people are saying. So I think that, if anything, this actually empowers them domestically, which you can't forget how important that is.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, wept openly at the funeral of Soleimani and vowed revenge. Iran has options in the region, in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and of course in the crucial waters of the Persian Gulf. The US says any retaliation will be met with force. Over 40 years since the founding of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and tensions between the two adversaries has never been higher. The US is already feeling the effects of the assassination. The Iraqi parliament has voted to end US troop presence in their country. Meanwhile, the US has suspended anti-ISIL training with Iraqi and NATO forces. Meanwhile, U.S. troops are hunkering down in their bases, fearful of attacks, and a troop withdrawal could follow. In the Middle East, the U.S. may be its own worst enemy. Nathan King, CGTN, Washington.